So good afternoon, everyone. I'm R.J. Elric with the Underage Drinking Enforcement Training Center, and this afternoon we're happy to have you with us as we hear from Kristan Allen, who will be talking about the importance of effective organizational messaging. A little bit of introduction. Kristan is the Director of Marketing and Communications at the Mentoring Partnership of Southwestern Pennsylvania. She oversees all of the marketing strategy and publicity as well as the communications outreach initiatives. She develops information and services including branding and messaging strategies and volunteer recruitment support for more than 150 mentoring programs in the southwestern Pennsylvania region. Kristan has facilitated presentations on mission-driven marketing, the importance of organizational identity, and crafting messages that resonate with the key audiences. Her collaboration with various mentoring networks and Mentor, the National Mentoring Partnership, has given her the opportunity to share her expertise with groups across the country, and I'm kind of excited myself to hear what Kristan has to share with us today. So with that, Kristan, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. I'm very excited to be here for round two. I presented a webinar last year on recruiting and retaining volunteers, so this is kind of a follow-up to that. And yeah, I'm very excited to be here. So I'm just a quick overview here.
Kristan, I'm going to ask you to stop for just a second. John Effingham has joined us and needs to mute his phone because we're getting feedback.
RJ?
Yeah?
It's Debbie. We're getting terrible echoing.
Yeah, it's John.
Oh, John.
There we go. Is that better?
Okay, I have muted John, so hopefully he's not offended.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Kristan.
We're muting you for the meantime. Don't be offended, John. Okay, so as RJ mentioned, my name is Kristan Allen. I'm the Director of Marketing and Communications with the Mentoring Partnership. And I am, again, really excited to be here with you all today. You'll see in front of you just a quick overview or agenda of what we're going to be talking about. The Mentoring Partnership is an intermediary nonprofit. So we're a nonprofit organization ourselves, but we work with more than 150 youth mentoring programs in the southwestern Pennsylvania region. We provide them with things like training, best practices, help with starting programs and maintaining programs so that they can offer the best services to their youth and their mentors. So we're in a unique situation where we're a nonprofit ourselves, but we also work with quite a few nonprofits. So it's given me a lot of really great perspective on marketing and communications things that work really well and even things that don't work so well, which is sometimes equally as valuable. So excited to share some of that with you today. And we're just going to get right into it. I am going to go through these slides here, go through this information, and then I am leaving some time for questions and brainstorming. On the last webinar, we had a lot of great questions and kind of open discussion, which I think is really helpful just to get people talking about specific examples and any questions that they have. So I definitely want to make sure we leave time for that at the end. So launching right in here, navigating change. Nonprofit communications is more challenging today than it's ever been. Gone are those days of static one-way communication between our organizations and the people we want to reach. We've really had to change the way we reach our audiences, and we also have to continually change the platforms that we use to share our information. Today's consumers, the people that we're trying to reach, are bombarded with information. In fact, people today see on average 3,000 different advertisements and messages per day from different companies or organizations asking them to do something or buy something. And I mean, we've all seen it. I've even seen it. I was at a stoplight the other day and saw someone checking their email on their phone. So, we're all wired these days. We've all got access to email, and we're seeing a lot of information a lot of different ways. And as nonprofit organizations, we're all vying for this attention, and that's a lot of info to compete with. And so with this information overload, it can be really hard for our messages to break through the clutter and really resonate with the people that we're trying to reach. So that brings us to our topic today about refining our message to ensure we're telling our story in the best way possible. So as I was developing our agenda, I wanted to make sure I stressed the importance of organizational messaging. And I could not think of a better way to do it than by sharing our own example at the Mentoring Partnership. The Mentoring Partnership was founded nearly 20 years ago with the purpose of championing mentoring within our region. So as we work to grow mentoring in southwestern Pennsylvania, we focused primarily on telling others' stories. We didn't care if people talked about the Mentoring Partnership. As long as they were talking about mentoring, it was a win for us. And as time went on, we realized we were purposely taking ourselves out of the equation. Before long, people were talking about mentoring, but they had absolutely no idea what our role was and why we were an integral part of mentoring needs in our community. It's a pretty bad situation to be in when you're a nonprofit organization that's trying to prove its value and inspire people to get involved with your work. So after this realization, we decided we needed to do a complete overhaul on our organizational messaging so that we could start telling our story. Using our strategic plan as a guide for our goals, we worked with our staff, our board of directors, and our marketing committee to identify the groups of people that we wanted to target, those groups of people that we felt were important for us. From there, we drafted and refined a core set of key messages that we thought would resonate best with those people we're trying to reach. So this message mapping process took the idea of capturing key points about our organization and drilled it down into a very strategic undertaking that gave us the opportunity to vet our messages with several groups to make sure that the information was clear, compelling, and most importantly, actionable. Phase one of the process started with an audit of all of our current communications materials. So we compiled all the information that we had been sharing about the mentoring partnership and reviewed it based on the key audiences that we identified. We gathered things like e-newsletters, annual appeals, annual reports, even website copy. We got everything all together and really just compiled a full list of everything that we were sharing about our organization. From there, we hosted a messaging retreat with our board of directors and our marketing committee to take that old messaging and decide what needed to stay and what needed to be updated. And this was a really interesting process because it was really cool to see which of us felt there was information that needed to stay and which of us really just wanted to start with a clean slate. So it was a really helpful exercise, but it's something that you definitely won't have 100% agreement on. So it's refreshing. It was a refreshing part of the process. Phase two of the process involved taking our new messaging and using it to inform a complete rebranding of our organization. So that included a refreshed logo and visual identity for the mentoring partnership, and that was all based on how we wanted people to perceive us and how we wanted them to feel whenever they saw our information. And then the final phase of the process included a complete redesign of our website and communication materials. So with the messages to inform all the content, the new graphic elements, we had everything we need to leverage our message mapping and ensure clear and consistent communication about the mentoring partnership across all of our channels, right? Wrong. One critical piece was still missing from the puzzle, and that was equipping others to tell our story. Now that we had that clear set of core messages that gave more background on the mentoring partnership and our work, we needed to share that with our internal audience to create brand ambassadors, those people who can share our story with others. You'll see here on the slide, I've got the Ask Me About My Grandchildren pillow. I don't know anyone who is more passionate about a specific subject than grandmothers. My mom is a new grandmother, and I think she has about 6 of these pillows at her house. And so as an organization, as someone who's wanting to build brands, I want brand ambassadors that are as passionate about my organization as grandmas are about their grandkids. So in order to do that, you really need to make sure that your brand ambassadors are equipped with the information to tell your story. So we went through the whole process. We had the messages. What we did to inform our network of brand ambassadors was create a messaging pocket card that was given to board members, committee members, volunteers, even staff members. It ensures that these groups have information about your organization at hand if they're in a position to talk about their affiliation with you or with your work. So, in an ideal world, I'm seeing that, all of our brand ambassadors are taking these cards out and just reading from them. But, I know that's not the case, but I think it's a really great tool, and it's proven to be a valuable tool for us anyway, that everyone feels more comfortable knowing that they have this information at hand and that it's accurate and that we're all saying the same consistent things. People like to hear good things about an organization, but those positive things are even more impactful when they're coming from someone who isn't a direct staff member. So that said, going this extra step and equipping your brand ambassadors with your information may seem like a small thing, but it can go a long way in ensuring accurate and consistent communication about your organization. When we talk about refining your messages, the first question that often comes to mind is, how do I know what to say and when? So as a staff member who's fully immersed in your organization and its work, it can be really tough to narrow down all of that information in your head into consistent points that will make it easier for others to understand what you're all about. You know, it's kind of like you get that deer in the headlights look where you're at a networking event and you start talking about your organization and you have so much information up there that you're really not sure what to lead with that's going to be compelling to the people that you're talking with. One way to decide on what might resonate most with someone who's completely unfamiliar with your work is to get back to basics and focus on the core of what you do. Lose the jargon and resist the urge to fall back on your mission statement. So, you know, I give this analogy all the time. If you were at career day with a group of high school students, how would you explain your organization's mission and work? Would that explanation change if the group were fourth graders instead of teenagers? You know, for example, one of the snippets that had been in our mission statement was the mentoring partnership is a catalyst for connections. And that's really true. And, you know, at the time we thought that was really impactful language that we wanted to include there. But what does that mean? You know, if I walked into a career day with a group of teenagers and I said that, they really might not understand what exactly I was talking about. But if I took that and said, no, the mentoring partnership connects young people with caring adults, that boils it down. It's still true. It's not any less true than that original first statement, but it really just makes it a lot easier for your audience to connect with that statement because it's easier to understand. Another thing to think about is the idea of the 3 C's of messaging. Good messages are concise, consistent, and connectable. Concise because concise messages are more efficient and easy to remember, both for those who are sharing them and for those who are listening or reacting to them. And when we talk about messages being connectable, we mean how relatable are your messages. You need to do what you can to make sure your audience is identifying with your information. You have to create that opportunity for connection. And finally, consistent. Once you've uncovered messaging that's impactful and does a good job of summarizing who your organization is and what you do, it's important to make sure you're consistent with using those messages. That's particularly important for staff members and others who are communicating on behalf of your organization, those brand ambassadors that we were talking about. So as we get back to basics and think about messages that will resonate best with those we're trying to reach, it helps to frame it up as what, so what, and now what. What is it I'm trying to convey to my audience? So what, as in why should they care? And now what? How do you want them to act on this information? As you begin to think about taking stock of your organizational messaging, it may help to do an audit of existing materials and collect a bulleted list of points that have been communicated about your organization. Once you have this info in one big list, segment it into one of the 3 buckets, the what, so what, and now what. And I mean, when I say, you know, segment it into the buckets, I literally mean get 3 sheets of paper or open up 3 Word documents and literally compile all of this information that you're auditing from your communications materials. It's definitely a little extra work, but you'll have it all there and you'll have it all organized. And then you can decide which of the existing statements is most impactful. And you can also decide if you need to start from scratch because none of the information is impactful, whether it's just not very exciting or whether it's outdated. This is a really good exercise to go through if you want to really take stock of what's out there right now and kind of go through a better way of organizing it. Organizing can really help you prioritize it so you're focusing on what's important to your audience and then cutting out all that extra information that might clutter up your main message. So let's talk a little bit about the concept of social distance. As a concept, social distance is the level to which you do or do not identify with an organization and the information it shares. So for example, let's say an organization sends me a flyer that in a very straightforward way talks about all the great updates they've made to specific neighborhoods through service learning projects they've coordinated. That might not resonate as much with me if I don't have an interest in the projects or the neighborhoods they're working in. But if they sent that same flyer that focused more on the opportunities for me to volunteer to mentor a child as they work on these service learning projects, it might resonate more with me because I have a personal interest in mentoring kids. So it seems like a very slight change in messaging focus actually does a lot to reduce the social distance for me personally, making it easier for me to connect with the information and ultimately with the organization. I feel closer to the organization and then can relate to it almost as if it were another person or friend within my network. You'll see the photo of the Lego people here as a way to visualize social distance, and I actually participated in a workshop that did this exercise. Think about those key messages that you'd organize into your what, so what, and now what buckets. And now think about your ideal volunteers. So let's say your volunteers are lined up in a group a fair distance away from you, the organization. Now you're going to read those messages about your organization. Each time your volunteers or your audience feels like they can relate to or identify with the message, they'll take one step closer to you. At the end, ideally, you'd like all of your volunteers to be right next to you, which means you've reduced the social distance and made it easier with your key messaging for them to relate to you as an organization. And conversely, if no one's close to you, then that might tell you a little something about maybe taking a step back and reevaluating those messages. So let's talk a little bit about understanding volunteer motivations. And this is something that we touched on in the last webinar and I feel is pretty important and would like to just go over again. One way to help reduce the social distance between you and your potential volunteers is to get a better understanding of their motivations. So one of the first things we're asking ourselves, particularly in the instance of volunteer recruitment, which a lot of us are charged with doing, is who are my volunteers and what does my volunteer landscape look like? So that information consists of two parts. Your ideal dream volunteer, so think about what this ideal person would look like, getting very specific and including things like age, demographics, things like that so that you have an idea of who you'd like to target. And then your real life volunteer pool. What kind of statistics does your organization capture now on current or past volunteers? Do you have a sense through those statistics who's more likely to sign up with your organization? Once we have a better understanding of our volunteer landscape, we can start talking about motivations. Marketing and communications in and of itself isn't just about reaching out to people. It's about understanding what's important to the people we're trying to reach and what makes them react to certain messages or calls to action. So there are 3 levels of motivation, and the first of these is self-serving drive. So this captures the idea that people often join an organization or get involved because it meets their needs, whether it's a need for business, for friendship, or belonging. When we think about marketing at this level, we have to stress the personal benefits volunteers will receive by getting involved. So does it meet a community service requirement, or is it a resume builder, or maybe it gives them an opportunity to network with other community members who are getting involved. The secondary level is relational drive. So this captures the idea that people volunteer or get involved because of friendship. When a friend personally asks someone to volunteer, it's often really hard to say no. Relational marketing is one of the most effective marketing tools. You'll see I have IIR there, investing in relationships. It's one of the strongest stimulators for our inner motivations, and many people join an organization and work as volunteers because they were recruited by a friend. So when we think about marketing at this stage, we need to think about leveraging relationships of people who are already involved with our organizations. And when I talk about this, this specific level, I always give the analogy of your friend asking you to move. So who really wants to spend a weekend moving, a huge couch or a futon from your friend's house to, to somewhere else? But anytime someone asks you to do something like that, don't you oftentimes find yourself saying yes, even though you would much rather be doing something else? That's kind of the strength of those relationships and kind of, getting involved when a friend asks you. And that third level, the highest level, is belief drive. When people believe in the cause of the organization, even if that cause will cost them something in terms of personal sacrifice, whether it's time or money, that's when a volunteer has the strongest level of commitment. So people often join an organization at level 1 or level 2, but in time they become true believers and passionate about the cause the more that they get involved, and that's really the ultimate goal for most organizations. So as we continue to talk about messaging and the importance of reaching people, the term target audience comes up a lot. This is a buzzword for me. I've leaned on it pretty heavily in my career, and I continue to do so. But I recently came across a new way of looking at this idea, and I'm liking it. I'm not going to throw target audience to the curb just yet, but I don't know if you're familiar with Kivy Miller. She's a nonprofit marketing consultant, and she runs a website and a blog at nonprofitmarketingguide.com. If you're not familiar with that or you haven't checked out that website, I highly recommend doing so. It's one of the few e-newsletters that I don't automatically delete. There's a lot of really good information that she has to share. I'm a contributor to her site, and I was also featured in her latest book, Content Marketing for Nonprofits. And in this book, she tosses the phrase target audience in favor of PSIs, participants, supporters, and influencers. So, at first I was very hesitant and was clinging tightly to target audience because that's, I throw that term around a lot. But the more familiar I got with the phrase PSIs and its meaning, the more I've come to like it because it captures that more evolved nature of communications with our key constituents. Gone are the days of rapid-fire one-way communication where we're just talking to people and hoping some of our info sticks. Today, effective communication involves that two-way dialogue where we're recreating a community of people who are invested in a shared cause and really join in the conversation around it. So when identifying people we want to communicate with, it's important to view them as active participants and make sure that our core messages work not just to inform them, but also to engage them. So in thinking about refining your messages to impact your communications and even your bottom line, it's really important to start with this step of identifying exactly who you're trying to reach. Who are your PSIs? Once you've identified these key groups, then you can start to formalize their role as brand ambassadors. And again, most important step in this process, giving them the tools they need to tell your story. After you take the time to refine those messages, you have to organize them and put them down on paper, and then share them. Share them via a physical piece of collateral like a one-pager or a pocket card or a bookmark, but also by using them to inform all the communications you send about your organization. Everything from year-end annual reports, annual appeals, website copy. These formalized messages can provide a framework for all of these opportunities and will ensure consistent communications surrounding your organization. Having the formalized messages also goes a long way in facilitating community partnerships. So as you identify important groups that you'd like to communicate, are there any that you find with a similar mission to yours? If so, consider a partnership. We're in Pittsburgh, and we are very fortunate to be in a community where partnerships with other organizations are very common and very successful. We're all very collaborative here, and it's great. It's a really great way to network, to meet other organizations that are similar in mission to you, but also to really highlight and draw attention to great causes that are in your area. In thinking about community partners, where do your work areas or interests overlap? How can you help each other? Partnerships with appropriate organizations can provide new ways to pool resources to raise money or host an event, or even just to leverage each other's networks so you can reach more people with the collective message. If you think about it, your typical email lists or your mailing lists, you've got those, but let's say you pull together with 3 other organizations to send a collective message. You just increase the number of people you're reaching, even just by email lists or mailing lists by X% because you've got access to that many more people. So a community partnership can make a whole lot of sense if it's appropriate with the scope of work. And lastly today, we're going to talk a little bit about taking stock of our communications toolboxes. So what is your comm toolbox? Basically, it's the overarching collection of regular tactics or methods of distribution you use to share your information with your key audiences. How many people send a regular e-newsletter or an annual report or even social media updates? All of these are examples of what could be in your comm toolbox. And if we covered every possible tactic, we could be here all day. So I'm going to go through a quick list of some easy, cost-effective things that we can do to raise awareness of our organizations and needs. And it's interesting, if you're not familiar with the Nonprofit Communications Trends Report, that's something that also is from Kivi Miller, and it's something that she does every year. She surveys more than 1,300 nonprofits across the country and gathers a lot of really interesting information about marketing and communications habits. And the tactics that I'm going to go over now, these are what are known as the Big Six. So out of 14 different marketing options, these 6 were voted the most important by more than 1,300 nonprofits. And it's interesting because these 6 tactics have not changed much over the last 2 or 3 years. So 3 of the 6 are online-based, which isn't very surprising. One thing that might surprise you, though, is that smaller organizations tend to be more social, while larger organizations tend to be more traditional, relying on channels like print or media relations. I think reasons for this could definitely include cost efficiency and the level of approvals needed to execute activities. It can definitely be a barrier to participating. So the first thing we'll talk about is email marketing. Email marketing is a very cost-efficient way to reach your entire network. 78% of nonprofits plan to email their networks at least monthly, and that figure's up from 75% last year. And not surprisingly, the more important a nonprofit believes email to be as a communications tool, the more frequently they plan to email their supporters. When you're developing an email, whether it's for one person or a blast for an entire audience, it's really important to think about the subject line. How many times have you, went through, drafted the email, carefully thought out all of the content for the email, and then you send it without the subject? Or you hurriedly realize that you don't have a subject and then just type something in. It's really important to put as much thought into the subject line as you put into your email content. I found a stat that 69% of subscribers base their decision to send your message to the spam folder on the subject line alone. So they're not even opening it. Nearly 70% of people will decide whether to hit delete just by what's in your subject line. And additionally, don't forget to prioritize the information in your email. We talk about the inverted pyramid anytime we're writing something. It's journalism 101. But according to a Nielsen-Norman Group usability study, readers spend an average of 51 seconds on each newsletter or email in their inbox. And since they need to scroll from top to bottom to view, you need to put that most important info at the top. Otherwise, they're going to miss it because 51 seconds is not very long. The second tactic we're going to talk about, or tool we're going to talk about, is websites. Websites can be a really easy, cost-effective way to house information online for people to find on their own. And one of the great things about websites is that you're not limited to how much information you can include. But unfortunately, that's also one of the bad things. It's very easy to overload a site with too much information, making it really hard for visitors to find what they're looking for. And I mentioned when we were going through our process of refining our messages and rebranding, one of the final component of that was completely redesigning our website. Our old website hadn't been redone in 5 years, which is a really long time. So we basically started from scratch. We migrated to a new content management system and worked with a great vendor to really help to redesign and refresh our website. And it was a very tedious process, especially when we were digging into the old website and kind of figuring out what content we wanted to keep there. We realized that there were things on our website that were 5 years old, obviously no longer relevant. We weren't even really sure, who had added them when. We just knew that they needed to go. So we definitely had some experience with that as we were redoing our website, how much information was on there that really didn't need to be on there. So when you're designing or updating a website, keep the sitemap in mind and make sure you're keeping tabs on all the info you add. A good rule of thumb, and something that I'm enforcing now that our new website is live, is that for every one thing you add, see if there's anything that can be taken away, either because it's outdated or just not necessary. Third tool is social media. So, no surprise that social media continues to be on the rise. It's cheap and it reaches a lot of people instantaneously. But what's attractive to some organizations can be really scary to others. Some organizations rely on social media to reach the majority of their networks. According to that communications trend report, Facebook was ranked 3rd most important marketing tool behind email marketing and websites. But some organizations are afraid they won't have anything important to say once they set up a Facebook page or a Twitter feed. Or worse yet, that they might say the wrong thing. So the important thing to remember with social media is that it's meant to be a dialogue. Social media doesn't channel advertising where it's just your organization blasting information out to people. Ideally, social media networks create a forum for an organization to share information and gain feedback from its constituents. And the more robust the dialogue, the more traction you're gaining. So remember, it's all about informing and engaging. Print, the old standby that includes things like newsletters and direct mail. This can be a little more expensive because it oftentimes involves design and printing costs, but don't count this option out. In an age when people's inboxes are bombarded by messages, it's sometimes really nice to receive a hard copy of something in your real mailbox. And events. Events are not appropriate for all occasions, but in instances where you have something really important to share and you have a draw, events can be a great way to gather people together to get to know your organization. It could be something as simple as a volunteer drive or a volunteer appreciation event, or something as elaborate as a large-scale fundraising event. Either way, the important thing with events is weighing the resources needed to facilitate the event versus the outcomes of the event, because events can be pretty costly to put on. And finally, media relations and public relations. So local media can be a very powerful tool for conveying your message to a lot of people. Take a look at local publications you'd like to reach, newspapers, radio programs, TV stations, and develop a contact list for all of these outlets. Having that media list prepared will make it easier for you to share information with people who might be interested in upcoming events or interview opportunities. And then when you have the list together, don't forget to reach out. Really, take stock of the activities that you have planned for the year, any big events or any big, rebranding or marketing campaigns that you'll be doing. And don't forget to alert your local media, because oftentimes all it takes is a phone call or a quick email, and it could turn into a really great story. And when we talk about auditing our communications toolbox, it's important to evaluate each tactic in it to see how they're all collectively working for you. So setting goals and tracking progress toward those goals can help by providing a benchmark to measure success. Measurement, particularly with social media, can be a really tricky process, and unfortunately for all of us, there isn't one right method of capturing the effectiveness of all of our communications efforts. But a few sample measurements of success that are easy and free to collect or track include one-to-one interaction at events, phone calls from people seeking more information, website traffic, if you have Google Analytics, could be in the form of unique monthly visitors, page views or new visitors, new volunteers, donations, sign-ups for your email list, new fans and followers on social media platforms, and even media impressions if you're doing a fair amount of media outreach. But regardless of the metrics that you choose to measure and track, it's important to track them regularly so you'll be able to chart your effectiveness over a period of time. This really, tracking, benchmarking, evaluating, it's something that I think falls by the wayside a lot of times because we're so, we're putting so much work into the marketing plan and the activities and, oh, what are we going to do, that we oftentimes don't think about evaluation, or it comes, as we're in the process of evaluating that we're just starting to think about what we need to do and what we need to collect. Evaluation is just as important as the marketing plan because it's the only way that you're going to know whether anything in your plan worked or whether it didn't work. So really important to think about that in advance so that you can do a good job of evaluating everything and deciding what you're going to continue to do and what you need to change up so that you can get better results. And that is all I have in terms of prepared information, but like I said, what I'd like to do is open it up for a Q&A or some brainstorming time. We do have a fair amount of time left, so if anyone has any questions or would like to kick the brainstorm off, I would be happy to answer those now.
Did we get a copy of the PowerPoint?
Yeah, we have the PowerPoint. We'll give you a copy.
Okay.
Kristan, one of the things, this is Debbie, I'm going to email you and ask you to give me the lady and the two different things that you mentioned, because one was a book, and the reason I say that is I'm not sure about everybody else listening, but I don't think this is that sharp of a, we've probably got the volume up so that for a conference call it's not that easy. So I'm going to email you, Kristan, after, and then I'll send it out to everybody when we send you the PowerPoint presentation.
Of course, of course. Yeah, I will definitely email you that information. Again, Kivy Miller is the lady's name, and she has the website and wrote the book. And I'm being serious when I say that it's one of the few e-newsletters. You get a daily newsletter. It's one of the few that I don't delete, just because she does have a lot of really good information to share.
Well, and I do know a lot of our members that work with on a nonprofit or grant basis or anything like that. Obviously, cost efficiency is a really big deal. So even though we might not be nonprofits, our budgets are so puny, we might as well be nonprofits.
You know what? In this day and age, a lot of times it doesn't matter whether you're nonprofit, for-profit, corporate. It's a tight time, and everybody's watching what they're spending. And ROI is really important. So if you can keep an eye on bottom line and still get great results, why wouldn't you do that? So definitely.
And we only have one of the members that had attended the first one, I think. I know one of the other people, our mentor program, they're out of town at a meeting today, but both of them are going to be, accessing the website, Kristan. And I do know Ken Ball is here, and he had been in the first one. And I know it was Kathy Miles and you, and I don't know who else because I was out of town.
I think I did.
Okay, maybe Marcia, yeah. So did you guys have any additional questions that maybe didn't get answered? I know we tried to cover things this time that maybe you had outstanding from the first presentation. And hopefully those that didn't attend the first one, you've heard some interesting or helpful information.
This is Ken. One of the things that we continue to struggle with in the Department of Corrections is figuring out how to retain our volunteer base. Not that they're falling away, it's just that we would like to find good ways to retain our volunteers and to show appreciation, but keeping in mind how difficult it is for people to add one more thing to one more meeting to go to just to be appreciated. It's not really fair to the people that are, seems like volunteers are very busy people. They tend to volunteer at a lot of things. So if you have any new ideas, Kristan, on how to show appreciation to volunteers, help retain them without making them crazy by making them go to more meetings.
Yeah, well, I think you're definitely right. It's really hard when you're already, you've got volunteers and you're fortunate that they're giving their time to you to volunteer in and of itself. You hate to add one more thing to their calendar by hosting an appreciation event. Appreciation events can be great, but again, just in being respectful for other people's times, it's definitely, I think, becoming a challenge to think of other ways to recognize people without having to have them reserve another hour or two out of their evenings. I think I mentioned, Ken, I know you had a similar question the first time around, and we got into a brainstorm about ways to recognize volunteers. And I think I mentioned this the last time about taking the time as program staffers, the program facilitators, taking the time to write a thank you letter, not just to them, but to the volunteers, employer, or particularly if it's a program that allows the person to leave work to volunteer. We've had some programs do that here locally where they were given time off from work to volunteer, and the program facilitators wrote just a really great letter about the volunteers' dedication and the impact that they were making, and sent it to their employer. And it was huge because they were getting recognition in their day job for something that they were doing, as their volunteer time. And it was really, it was a small gesture. It doesn't cost anything to write a letter, but it's definitely something that kind of lifts the volunteers up, and also lifts them up in the eyes of the people that they work with, which is great.
Yes, we tried that recently, and it was kind of funny because our superintendent and one of the other managers and myself had the same idea at the same time, and we ended up sending 3 letters.
Maybe coordinate it and have it all 3 times a year.
Next time we'll coordinate a little better.
Yeah, better schedule.
Yeah.
Well, no, but you know what? That person might just get a promotion quicker, so there you go. But another thing too, and I've seen this. A couple of our programs have done this recently, and it was more adult mentors paired with young children. So I realize the impact is a lot greater when it's young children involved. But we have programs that have the children take the time to write a letter to their volunteers at the end of the year, just saying thank you, but really going more in depth on the impact that their involvement has had on their lives. And I just saw a really, really awesome example of this where a program had the kids write a letter, getting some of those specifics in, but then they also drew a picture about how the volunteer made them feel, or how them spending time with them has impacted their life. And it was so touching for the volunteers to receive something like that. Now, I think for your specific program, you're not necessarily dealing with youth or young children, but even having having the people involved with your program write just a heartfelt thank you, and just saying, look, we're getting down to basics here. What has this volunteer's involvement meant to you over the past year or whatever? I don't think we should underestimate the impact of a personal letter like that. I mean, I think it's something that people keep, and it's something that reminds them of why they're getting involved in the first place.
That is a great idea. We have not done that.
You know, it's funny you should say that. This year, for the first time, instead of the schools thanking us for having, in our prevention department, bringing in a speaker they really like, you all have heard us talk about the guy who's the former stand-up comic. He's a really good professional stand-up comic, and he's a prevention and a treatment person for addiction. And they had the student counselor officers all wrote different letters to, I can't remember, we got a couple of them, but yeah. The ironic, funny thing was they were doing it for 2 reasons from the school, and it was Lakeview High School that did it, and they had them write the note, and one of the groups wrote the note upside down on the thank you note thing, so she had them rewrite it and explain to them, you should probably look at it. And so it was kind of like a lesson for the student also on how you actually write a thank you note, and right. You know, they went back to them and made them switch it. She shared it with me and showed me the first version, and she said, we've got them rewriting it. And I thought it was funny, but it was kind of cute to see it from the kids. It was the first letter I think we got from the kids.
Yeah.
So that's fun. And I'll share with Kathy the one about the drawings, because I know our youth mentor program, a lot of the kids are smaller kids, and they might be able to write a thank you note, but I'm not sure how good it might make somebody feel versus a picture might work better.
Well, and that's part of the thing that's so meaningful, and you know, I share that example because my coworker mentors with a mentoring program that serves kids in grades 2 through 5, and so it's actually kind of an end-of-year activity that she participated in, and she has it framed on her desk, and it's just an amazing photo and, you know, thank you that was written by, you know, an 8-year-old or 7-year-old who honestly was just, you know, wanted to thank her for coming every week, and it meant so much to her, I know, and it's something that she keeps there every day, just as a reminder. So I think those can be really impactful and can do a really good job of letting people know they're appreciated, and also, you know, reinforcing the importance of them being involved because they are making a difference, and everyone wants to see that.
The other thing that you've made me think about is you talked in the first one about some of the inexpensive gifts, and I hate to give my secrets, but our UPIC members, who these all are today that are sitting here, we do give little quarterly thank yous periodically. I say quarterly because sometimes it's not evenly every quarter, but it's periodical enough that it's at least a good couple a year. And she mentioned what resources and stuff like that. If you go back and look at that YouTube one, that would be helpful. Maybe you might want to spend the time to listen to it. But also, if you need things for us, we not only have inexpensive ones where you could put a logo, but some of us, I won't mention any names, that who is like me also, that we buy them at the last minute and they're already pre-printed with the thank you message because we're usually busy doing other things.
Yep. Yeah, there are a lot of.
We can give you ideas on that if you ever want to do it, whether it's for your staff or whether it's for an advisory board or a board of directors or anything. We do it in a couple of different cases with myself and some other colleagues in UPIC.
That's great. Yeah, there are a lot of great websites out there that you know, have affordable, smaller gifts like that. And again, with those small gifts, if you do decide to do something like that, it's a great opportunity to brand it with, you know, with your logo, and it kind of becomes something that, you know, other people will see and, you know, hopefully will provide a little more recognition for your brand. You know, things like the reusable tote bags. I always see those in the grocery store these days. You know, putting some thought into what you're giving out in terms of what are you going to get the most mileage out of, and what are people more likely to use, and therefore, you know, have other people see. I think it could definitely be a big payoff. Anything else? Any other questions or anything? I hope this information was helpful. This is, you know, messaging is something that I think just when you think you get it right, it's time to take a look at and reevaluate again. So it's something, it's a constantly moving target. But, you know, again, in this day and age where there's so much that people are listening to or reading or watching on TV, I think it's definitely a worthwhile conversation to have, just to make sure that we're all telling our stories the best way that we can.
Well, the other thing, Kristan, being the marketing person that you are, and having come from my background, one of the things that a lot of people here do work with volunteers, but not everybody in this room works with volunteers. But even as a department head or you know, a manager of a lot of people in a workforce, you can also do some of these little things more on a motivational and thank you kind of. Once you have a staff, it's a lot easier when they get paid.
Yeah.
And they don't have to volunteer, but that doesn't mean like appreciation and thank you sometimes aren't helpful. And because I think in our community, I think there's an awful lot of people that probably go above and beyond and do a little bit more than just what their job is, you know.
Definitely.
When you're in a small community, you tend to know the people that you service, so you tend to maybe overextend what you would do or help them with than you would on a regular job if you were sitting in a big city.
I agree with that for sure. It's you know, and even in a small organization, you know, I mean, it's we all wear multiple hats too. So you know, at the community level and organization level, there's a lot of people that do a whole lot more than, you know, maybe their job description. So yeah, it's definitely it's a good thing, but it's also important to recognize. Anything else?
I think everybody
I think we're good.
Okay, well, I think my job now is to turn it over to Marcia.
Aww.
Thank you.
Yeah, and if you guys don't have any other questions, what I'm going to do, I'm going to pause my screen. I know you guys have the rest of your meeting to go through. I will email the link to the extra information, and then, you know, please feel free to share my email address. If anyone has any questions or anything, I'm always happy to, you know, to brainstorm and talk things through. I don't claim to have all of the right answers, but sometimes it's just nice to have a sounding board to share information with and bounce ideas off of. So more than happy to do that.
Absolutely. Thank you for your time. We really appreciate it.
No problem. You guys have a great rest of your meeting and afternoon.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks,
Kristen, thanks for your help. Eric,
Thank you, RJ.
do you need us to keep this recording inactive, or can we close? It sounds like John just dropped off just a couple of moments ago, so it sounds like everybody that's left will be in your room.
Yes, they
Sounds
are.
good.
And when you say active, the technologically challenged person then asks you, RJ, do you mean active like stay on the line, or you're going to send us a link and we're going to be able to send it out to them pretty quickly, right? If they want to.
Yeah, as soon as it takes just a couple of minutes for it to format, and then it's a file that we upload to our server, and then I send you a link like we did last time. So
Okay,
Perfect.
then.
Thank you.
within an hour or so, I should have that. So I just wanted to make sure that you were all set. You didn't need anything recorded from this point on, and if that's the case, I'll go ahead and close this out, and you can finish your meeting in person.
We are wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks, RJ. We appreciate you
All right.
as usual.
Thanks so much. Have a great day.